It was the 20th night in a row, though, to be honest, I'd lost count sometime after the second. What I hadn't lost was the sound of her voice, that exact same tired phrase delivered with robotic finality as she pulled the covers up to her shoulders and turned her back to me. I'm just tired, not angry, not dismissive, just flat, like someone reciting an old line they no longer believed but still knew by heart. I used to believe. The first few nights, I chalked it up to long days at the office, her sister's ongoing crisis that seemed to flare up any time we had a weekend to ourselves, or the exhausting churn of family obligations neither of us particularly enjoyed. I even blamed myself once or twice. Maybe I hadn't been emotionally available and hadn't offered enough help with the daily clutter of life. But eventually, belief gave way to something colder. Not suspicion yet, just awareness. She wasn't tired when it came to other people. She had energy for her coworkers. I'd see the sparkle in her eyes when she talked about a hilarious thing Tony said during lunch. She had energy for her friends, could spend an entire Friday evening in animated group chats or on FaceTime, laughing over glasses of red wine while I read quietly in the next room. And on the rare nights we had plans, she transformed. Hair done, light perfume, a slight extra attention to how her clothes fit. Not for me. I was background noise by then, a reliable fixture. The real shift, though, came in the smaller detail. She used to tell me about her day in the car ride home. Now, she scrolled through her phone with a vacant expression. She used to press into my side while we watched TV. Now, she curled up at the far end of the couch with a blanket pulled tight and her phone angled carefully, always away from my view. Once or twice, I caught a faint smile while she typed, a private grin she didn't offer me. Still, I didn't push. I didn't pry. Not yet. There's a specific kind of silence that forms in a house where the unspoken starts taking up space. It's not the kind that follows an argument, it's colder, deeper, more strategic. It fills the hallways, hangs over dinner, and settles like dust in the bedroom. I started feeling it every time I sat down across from her, every time I reached for a small moment of warmth and got only practice politeness in return. And yet every night the same routine. She'd finish her nighttime scroll, walk into the bedroom already half undressed, and mumble it. I'm just tired. It started to feel less like a statement and more like a border being drawn, a red line, and I got the message. So I stopped asking. I stopped reaching for her at night. I stopped trying to close that invisible distance. No snide remarks, no cold shoulders, just a quiet withdrawal. I gave her what she claimed she needed: rest, space. No pressure, but giving space has consequence, because silence isn't just an absence of noise, it's a presence of its own. And eventually she noticed it too. But before she ever said anything, I'd already started noticing more than just her rehearsed bedtime line. She wasn't just tired, she was hiding. And I had a growing feeling I wasn't the only one she was keeping out. The worst part, I still wanted to be wrong. I still hoped, deep down, that she really was just tired, that life had worn her down and the warmth we once shared had been buried under routine and fatigue, not lies. But hope is a fragile thing when facts start replacing feeling. And the facts, though quiet, had already started to stack up. One night as I lay next to her staring at the ceiling in the dark, her back once again turned, I whispered a simple response. Okay. She didn't hear it, or maybe she did and just didn't care. Either way, that was the night something shifted, quietly, finally. That was the night I stopped waiting for her to turn back toward me. I didn't announce anything. No dramatic sighs, no slammed doors or long stares across the dinner table. I just stopped asking. No more reaching for her shoulder in the dark. No more light touches when I passed behind her in the kitchen. No more waiting at the foot of the bed for her to finish brushing her teeth, hoping maybe that night would be different. It never was. So I adapted. In the mornings, I woke up earlier and started running again. I hadn't laced up those shoes in nearly a year, but it felt good, not just the motion, but the discipline, a choice that was mine. When I got back, she'd still be in bed most days, scrolling or staring blankly at the ceiling. I'd shower, make coffee, pack my things. I didn't make a show of anything, I just kept moving. At work, I focused harder. I accepted extra meetings, cleaned out the backlog of emails I'd ignored for months. My responses became sharper, my presentations more precise. Colleagues noticed. A few even complimented me. "You're on fire lately," one guy said. I smiled and shrugged. He didn't know that I had nowhere else to put my energy. Evenings changed too. I'd get home, heat something simple, eat at the counter. She'd usually arrive later, always with a soft hey, like it was a checkpoint in a game. Not warm, not cold, just functional. We stopped syncing. That's the best way I can describe it. She floated in her world and I moved in mine. Two bodies occupying the same house but different timeline. And then came the comment. Small, unsure, like someone poking a sleeping animal to see if it would move. You've been quiet lately. I looked up from my laptop and gave her a neutral smile. Just focused on work. A few nights later, you didn't even say good night. I set my book down, met her eyes for a moment, then nodded slightly. Didn't want to bother you. You're tired, right? She hesitated, blinked. I saw the faint flicker of confusion, like a light trying to come back on in a long-abandoned room. But she didn't say anything else. That was the game we played now, coded words, implied meanings, gentle deflection. But I was done playing defense. I wasn't going to beg for connection, not from someone who rationed it out like a resource she resented having to share. Instead, I started going out more. A drink here, a late gym session there. Nothing scandalous, no secrets. I just stopped centering her in my schedule. Once she texted me at 10:43 p.m., everything okay? I replied after a 10-minute pause, yep, just finishing up at the gym. She never responded. The more I pulled back, the more she started to notice. Little things. She began asking more questions. Where have you been? Did you eat already? You're out late. I gave her polite answers. Calm, measured, factual, never angry, never cold. Because the truth was I didn't want to fight, I wanted clarity. And silence had become my most effective tool. She could feel something shifting. She just didn't know what it was yet. But soon she would. Because while she was busy being tired, I was wide awake, watching, thinking, preparing. Her fatigue didn't fade, it just shifted direction. She stopped going to bed before me. That was the first new pattern. I'd be brushing my teeth or putting away laundry and she'd be sitting on the couch, lit only by the pale blue of her phone screen. Sometimes she'd be smiling at me, not often, just enough for me to notice. She didn't realize I'd started noticing everything. There was the way she kept her phone face down now, always. Even when we were just watching something dumb on TV. She used to leave it charging in the kitchen overnight. Now it never left her side. Once, she even took it into the bathroom while she showered, said she was expecting an important message from work. She didn't used to lie that carelessly. Then came the late return. I grabbed a drink with Michelle, she'd say, letting her keys hit the table like punctuation. We hadn't caught up in forever. Her tone was breezy, too casual, practiced. The first time I checked the shared iPad was by accident, or maybe not. Maybe something in me needed to find the truth before the doubt hollowed me out completely. She hadn't logged out of her cloud account. I opened the Messages app. My hands didn't shake. They should have, probably, but they didn't. They were steady in the way a surgeon's hands are steady before the first cut. There it was, a string of messages under a name I didn't recognize, Carla Work. But Carla had a beard in her profile picture, flirty emojis, a string of inside jokes. One message read, he still thinks you're just tired. Another, you're drained at home because it's boring there. With me you light up. There was a photo, just her face, soft lighting, eyes a little too wide, smile just enough off-center to look rehearsed. She descented at 10:48 p.m. the same night she told me she needed to go to bed early. I stared at the screen for a long time. Not angry, not even surprised, just still. What hit hardest was what he said. It was what she didn't. She never defended me, never corrected him, just played along. She laughed when he mocked me. She let him describe our home as dead space. And she agreed, not with words but with silence. I didn't close the iPad. I didn't delete the thread. I took screenshots, every line, every photo. I uploaded them to a cloud folder with a cold, clinical name, Records. And then I put the iPad back where I found it. The next morning she made eggs like nothing had happened. She wore a loose sweater, the one I got her last winter on a weekend trip she said was her favorite. She poured coffee into my mug without asking if I wanted any. A habit, not a gesture. Big day today, she asked casually. I met her eyes for a split second. Yeah, might be. I didn't let anything in my voice give me away. Because now I knew. The fog was gone. The denial, the confusion, the hope gone. In its place just facts, just clarity, and the beginning of a plan. I didn't hate her in that moment. That came later. First came the disappointment, then the quiet grief of knowing that the woman I came home to every night had been holding someone else in her mind while lying next to me, that she saw me less as a partner and more as a placeholder. I looked at her as she walked into the other room, scrolling her phone, probably laughing at some message from him. I wondered if she thought I was still too soft to see it. Maybe I had been, but not anymore. And she had no idea that while she buried her truth behind "I'm just tired," I had already begun preparing the wake. The first thing I did was stop reacting. That sounds simple, but it was. Every time she smirked at a message, every time she slipped out for a quick drink, every time she kissed me on the cheek like it was part of her routine, I wanted to look her in the eyes and ask, why him? Why this? "Why are you still here?" But I didn't. I kept my hand steady, my voice level, my presence unthreatening, because what she didn't know was that I'd already started the separation process, not emotionally, but tactically. I scheduled a meeting with a lawyer 2 towns over, a woman with a reputation for thoroughness and teeth. I brought everything: screenshots, timelines, a copy of our prenup, and a list of shared assets. I spoke plainly, without anger, without pity, just facts. She looked at me across the conference table and said, "You're ahead of most." I smiled faintly. "I can't afford to be behind." The lawyer gave me the roadmap: protect your accounts, freeze joint liabilities, gather proof quietly, and above all, don't tip her off. I followed every instruction like doctrine. I opened a new personal bank account and rerouted my direct deposit. I called my firm's HR department and updated my emergency contacts and beneficiary. I reviewed the deed to our house and confirmed what I already knew: it was in my name alone, thanks to the prenup she insisted we didn't need but eventually signed. At home, nothing changed on the surface. I cooked dinner twice a week, same as before. I cleaned up after myself. I responded to her texts. I kept the lights low and the conversation lighter. I became boring, intentionally so, predictable, undemanding. She thought I was pulling away emotionally, and she wasn't wrong, but she mistook it for weakness. That was her first real mistake. One night she came into the room wearing an old t-shirt of mine, hair damp from the shower, and climbed into bed without a word. After a pause, she reached for me. Not seductively, more like a test. A flicker of contact to see if anything was still alive. I didn't flinch, I didn't recoil, I just didn't move. She withdrew her hand slowly, quietly, like nothing had happened. But I saw her lying there afterward, eyes open in the dark. She didn't try again the next night or the next. Instead, she started asking questions. "You've seemed distant lately." I shrugged. "Just tired." Her eyebrows flicked upward just a second. The echo of her own excuse thrown back at her. She didn't press. I made sure to keep everything smooth. I kissed her goodbye in the morning. I texted her if I was working late. I responded to her half-hearted affection with polite gesture. Never cold, never cruel, just absent where it counted. The more she felt the shift, the more she tried to test the waters. Casual smiles, quick touches on the arm. She made my favorite dinner one night, hadn't done that in 6 months. I thanked her, complimented it, washed the dishes, then went back to reading in the other room. She was trying to decide if she'd miscalculated, and I wanted her off balance, uncertain whether I knew anything, uncertain whether she was losing control. Because while she was busy wondering what I was thinking, I was already deep into preparation. The financial foundation was secured. The documentation was complete. The legal advice was logged and followed. Every text message, every timestamp, every inconsistency in her timeline, I had it cataloged. I'd even set up a secure backup of her entire message thread through a cloned app she didn't know I had access to. I wasn't collecting revenge. I was collecting leverage. There's a difference. And when the time came to use it, I wouldn't shout. I wouldn't plead. I'd simply lay the facts on the table and walk away with what was mine. But not yet, because she still thought I was just fading. She didn't know I was already gone. It came in at 9:52 p.m. on a Wednesday. I was sitting in my car in the gym parking lot, watching rain smear the windshield into soft blurs, when the latest message synced into the clone app on my phone. He'd sent, "Tell him you're still tired. He's basically your roommate at this point." A minute later, "He'll be fine. He's too soft to do anything drastic." I stared at the screen, the glow of the message pulsing like a slow heartbeat. My reflection in the windshield didn't flinch. I wasn't surprised, not really. Disgusted, maybe, not just by him but by her. The woman I had built a life with was using my silence as confirmation that I was harmless. They were wrong. I sat there for a while longer. No music, just the quiet hum of the engine and the soft tick of cooling metal. Then I opened my travel app and booked a 2-night stay under my corporate account, just outside the city. I labeled it as a business trip on the shared calendar, something she wouldn't question. When I got home that night, she was already in bed, her back to me. Lights off, predictable. I left a note on the kitchen counter, not handwritten, printed professionally like a memo. It read, "Rest up, I'll be out of your way for a couple days, don't wait up." The next morning I packed light, one small suitcase, a laptop, the folder of evidence, now printed and labeled in a binder so clinical it might have come from a courtroom. She didn't ask where I was going. She barely looked up from her phone when I walked past her in the kitchen. Another miscalculation. The time away wasn't about escape. It was strategy. While I was gone, I met with one final attorney, a specialist in civil litigation. I had researched something most people overlook: tortious interference with a marriage. In our state, it's rare but still enforceable, especially when documented thoroughly. The messages, the timing, the intent to undermine a committed relationship, it all mattered. I didn't sleep much during those 2 nights. But I didn't need to. I used the hours to organize every digital thread, align every message with dates, flag contradictions in her stories. When I was done, I had a complete narrative, not of heartbreak, of breach. On the third day, I returned home earlier than planned. It was raining again, fitting, I guess. I pulled into the driveway around 6:50 p.m. The house lights were on. Music was playing. I let myself in through the back door. Quiet, deliberate. She didn't hear me at first. She was at the dining table, a bottle of wine open, 2 glasses, candles lit, and across from her, him. He wasn't some stranger anymore. He had a name, a face. A job title, one that, unfortunately for him, connected to a partner company my firm worked with regularly. She was wearing a robe, one she hadn't touched in months. She looked up mid-laugh and froze. Her eyes met mine. The laughter collapsed instantly. The color drained from her face. I didn't say a word at first. I walked forward slowly, set the binder down on the table between their glasses, and opened it just enough for the first page to be visible. Screenshots, dates, message log, a timeline. She didn't move. I turned to him next. He was trying to stand, one hand halfway to the back of the chair. "You should leave," I said quietly. "I know exactly who you are, and you know what this means for your job." He froze, his lips parted, but nothing came out. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to say another word. He left fast, nearly tripping on the way out. The door swung open hard behind him, then shut with a thud. She looked at me then, mouth trembling like she couldn't decide what lie to start with. I didn't let her. "I'm not here to argue," I said, still calm. "I'm not here to ask questions you don't deserve to answer. I'm here to finish something." Her eyes darted to the folder. "This isn't what you think," she whispered. "You're right," I said, stepping back. "It's worse." And I left her sitting there alone, the wine now bitter, the candles flickering around the evidence of everything she'd tried to keep hidden. The moment she called me soft, she lost the benefit of not being taken seriously. She tried to reach me the next morning, a text, "We need to talk." Then another, "Please just give me a chance to explain. It's not what it looks like." I didn't respond. She called twice. I let both ring. She didn't leave a voicemail. I wasn't avoiding her. I was building the next wall. By noon, I had filed the paperwork. Divorce initiation, full enforcement of the prenup, emergency motion to freeze joint accounts, all with her signature already copied and cataloged. My attorney filed the petition for tortious interference the same afternoon, his name printed in black ink, tied directly to breach, provable damages, and professional fallout. What surprised me was how fast the professional consequence landed. 3 days after the filing, my firm received a very polite call from his employer, one of our largest partner firms. The man had been put on immediate leave pending. In corporate language, that's halfway to the curb. I didn't gloat. I didn't push. I didn't have to. Meanwhile, at home, she was unraveling. She started showing up at places she never went: the gym, the dry cleaner I used, even the corner coffee shop I'd been frequenting, always alone. Always with that same fractured look in her eyes, like she was hunting for a version of me she'd lost and didn't know how. The woman who'd been so confident in her secrecy, so certain I was too soft to act, now couldn't finish a sentence when I passed her. Can we talk?" I'd look at her calm and unreadable and say, "There's nothing left to talk about." She tried other angles, guilt, nostalgia. She left a photo album out on the kitchen table, one from our first vacation together. Saw it. I didn't open it. One night she cornered me in the hallway as I came out of my home office. "Please," she said, and for the first time in weeks her voice cracked. "This doesn't have to end like this. We can fix it." I looked at her for a long time. There was no fire left in me, just clarity. "You weren't tired," I said. "You were done. You just didn't want to be the one to leave first." She flinched like the truth landed harder than she expected. And then I dropped the final piece. "Want a test?" I said. "You're pregnant and we haven't been close in months." Her face drained, no denial, just silence. The kind that screams the truth louder than anything. I handed her the envelope already sealed, chain of custody intact. Her OBS lab had mailed it to my attorney. A week later the result came in. Not mine. She stared at the paper like it was in another language, tried to reach for some spin, some rationalization. Maybe this is a sign, maybe it's a new start. A blessing. I looked at her and I felt nothing. Not rage, not sadness, just finality. "Funny," I said. "You used to be tired, now I'm the one too exhausted to care." I walked out without another word. She didn't follow. There was no next chapter for us. No closure talk, no drawn-out arguments. Just silence, the same silence she once used to hide in. Now it was the only thing she had left. The fallout wasn't loud. It was quiet in the way a building collapses from the inside, a slow crumble behind polished walls. I didn't issue ultimatum. I didn't raise my voice. But I acted. Every step calculated, every document airtight. Her name was removed from the house within 30 days, prenup enforcement, uncontested. She didn't have the legal grounds to fight it. She tried to call a separate attorney. That attorney called mine after reviewing the timeline and said flatly, "She has no standing. Your client did this by the book." Her financial access vanished next, no joint credit, no access to the main account. The lawyer structured a single temporary support payment, just enough to satisfy process while the case played out. She protested. Her voice cracked in the mediation room. My attorney remained unmoved. His job didn't survive the quarter. He was transitioned out after the internal review confirmed a breach of ethics, a clause I had flagged in our partner agreement months earlier. I didn't even have to be in the room. His own company closed the door for me. Word got out slowly, as it always does. Friends grew distant. Some stopped texting her entirely. One couple we used to spend holidays with told me later they had seen things as subtle moments, strange body language, but never thought it would go that far. They told her nothing. She stopped showing up to social events. She tried posting vague, hopeful captions online, "New beginnings, trust the journey, every storm passes." Nobody engaged. The silence was public now, not just mine, and then there was the test. The moment of truth wrapped in sterile paper and cold ink. The test result left no room for doubt, not even a sliver. When she saw it, I watched something change in her, not sorrow, not rage, empty. Like even she hadn't let herself believe the possibility. Or maybe she had and she just hoped I never would. She tried to tell me it was a mistake, not the result, the meaning. Maybe this was fate. Maybe this happened for a reason. Maybe it's a new start. She said those words like they would mean something, like I hadn't already watched her choose another man behind my back, lie in my bed with secrets still clinging to her hair, and mock me to him like I was nothing. All I said was, "You used to be tired." She blinked, confused, unsteady. I stepped past her, opened the door, and paused. Now I'm the one too exhausted to care. And I left. No dramatic send-off. No second glance, just the sound of the lock turning behind me. She doesn't get a recovery arc. She doesn't get to be the victim. She made her play and she misread the board. And me? I didn't move on immediately. I didn't rush into distraction. I sat with the wreckage, took inventory of what was mine and what wasn't, grieved quietly. But I also slept fully, finally, in my own space, with no lies hanging in the dark. She said she was tired, but she never understood real exhaustion, the kind that comes from carrying someone else's secrets on your back until the weight starts grinding you down. I dropped the weight, and I never picked it up again.